MacGyver, SG-1, Episode 17, Little Surprises. The Past. Jack O'Neill sat back in the wheeled office chair and used his foot up on the table to steady himself, as he bobbed and weaved at the action on the small screen in front of him. He had written his reports and run through all his other duties as second-in-command of the SGC. And now, he was desperate. He was determined to conquer the next level of this video game, or die trying. Or die, restart, and try again, as were the typical settings for these types of things. As his thumbs toggled and smashed the fire button, a smaller figure stood in the open doorway, dumbfounded. "Hey! You're in my chair!" "Oh, yeah. Just let me..." Never mind. It looked like the Colonel would have to start that level again. "All yours," he said as he spun in the chair and tossed the controllers to a teenage version of himself, dressed in a much smaller version of his green BDUs. "Gee, thanks," the teen snarked. "Old Doc Frazier says I'm all clear. No melting in the meat goo for me." Jack winced at the image. He was looking at what was an imperfect clone of himself. A few days before, one of the little gray aliens known as the Asgard had gone behind their backs and beamed up Jack while he slept. Their race was dying off, and it was desperate to unlock the secrets for cloning new bodies for their species. Due to a marker in his DNA from a previous adventure, the clone came back, a little off. He wasn't even supposed to last more than a few days. Fortunately, Jack was able to convince their alien friends to fix the glitch and let him live. Well, that's good news, huh? As the younger version nodded, Jack thought of something. Listen, since you're no longer on limited time, we gotta give you a different name. I can't have people calling us both Jack O'Neill. It's just odd. But I like Jack. Why do I have to be the one to change? He was definitely O'Neill's clone. Right down to the stubborn obstinance. Have you looked in a mirror lately? Jack Jr. caught his reflection in a nearby wall mirror and slumped his shoulders. "Oh, right. Well, what should I use?" Jack took a moment. "How about John? It's a little formal, but still true to our name." "Yeah. That'll work." "Nice." Jack smirked. He was happy to give his odd new companion something he liked. Plus, they wouldn't both answer in unison to their name being called. It happened far too much to be amusing anymore. So, what's the plan then? Not sure yet. Hammond is looking into getting me set up for a new life somewhere. But until then, I guess I'm stuck here on base. John shrugged his shoulders. I meant today. What do you have planned for today? Oh, video games and junk food, I guess? Why? Jack was formulating a plan. Well, I was planning on visiting Mac for a couple days. I want to catch him up on some stuff. If General Hammond allows it, you want to tag along? John stared back at O'Neill, and a big grin started to form. What? Can you imagine the look on Mac's face when he sees me? It took Jack a second to catch up, but then his glee matched John's. Oh. This is going to be fun. Jack bounced as he led the way out of the room and towards Hammond's office. Before long, he was waiting for John to pack his bag and wandered through the corridors. He eventually found his second-in-command at her PC typing away, with an open book next to her keyboard in her lab. He leaned in the doorway. Carter! Writing a book?
Actually, yes, sir. I am.
Major Carter looked up smiling. He noticed the beautiful gleam in her eyes and couldn't help but mirror her enthusiasm. Her regulation hairstyle, while short, still had enough style to highlight her feminine features. Oh, well. Neat. Listen, the kid and I are heading out to visit Mac. You want to come along? He really wanted her to. Besides enjoying her company, he would have someone to break up the awkward silence between him and John. It was still too weird for both of them.
I can't, sir. I only have a few days to get these chapters done.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure he and Cindy would love to see you.
Yeah, maybe next time. Give them my love, though, okay?
Jack tried to hide the crushing disappointment he felt while he slowly backed out of the room. Will do. Have fun. Samantha Carter suddenly sprung up from her chair.
Wait! Sir! You want to hear what it's about?
The colonel paused. Your book? Sam nodded. Will I understand it? Carter lowered herself back into the chair.
Well, no. Sir, probably not.
Jack smirked at how awkwardly cute and uncomfortable she was. I'll wait for the movie. He left, but saw her start to hide her giggle as he walked away. A few hours later, MacGyver was pulling his Jeep into the garage under his California loft apartment after a quick trip to the grocery store. His red SUV was parked on the street, but he tried to only use that for the repair jobs he took during the week. He didn't know when to expect his brother, but wanted to have some of his favorite snacks on hand. Usually the retired troubleshooter wouldn't eat these things, but when Jack was around, he allowed himself to misbehave. As the garage door closed behind him, Mac couldn't help but remind himself that he really couldn't keep putting off sorting through all the clutter down here. Boxes of junk he never used or rarely thought of filled up most of the back wall of the room. Cindy was gently mentioning it now, too. What could he say? He was a pack rat. He grabbed the bags and flipped the overhead light off that also turned off the neon sign that hung on the back wall and started up the stairs. He wondered how his boy was doing. Last he knew, Sean was in Bosnia on assignment. Mac kept a bag packed in case he ever got the call that his son needed help. It was unlikely, but it helped him cope. Sean was more than capable of handling himself. But it was his boy after all. As he neared the top of the steps, he could hear Cindy talking to someone. As he walked in from the stairwell, he was greeted with the smiling faces of his girlfriend and his brother, who stood up from the couch he was leaning against. "There he is," Jack said as Cindy rushed around him to greet her partner.
Hi, honey. Oh, let me take those.
She said, giving him a welcome home kiss and taking the bags off him. The Colonel was right behind her with a hand extended that folded into a man hug once Mac took it. "How are you?" "Good. How about you?" Knees are a little sore, but..." Jack let out a lighthearted chuckle. He knew Mac shared his sense of humor, and it felt good to be with him. Just past him, Mac caught a glimpse of Cindy smirking while putting stuff away. Then he glanced back at his twin. Something was going on. "What? What are you two smiling about? Did she tell you?" Cindy hurried from the kitchen, shaking her head.
Nope.
Jack turned back to her. "What? Tell me what?" Mac and Cindy locked eyes for confirmation as he answered. "We have news." As his brother's lips started to form the question, "What?" Cindy held out her left hand. Prominently on her ring finger sat a beautifully clear-cut diamond engagement ring. Whoa! When did this happen? Last night. Here. Mac thought about making a grand sweeping gesture and possibly proposing with something like a treasure hunt theme, but decided against it. On one hand, it would have felt unnecessary since the two of them were so alike and hated anything gimmicky. Also, Mac was too impatient to wait, so he proposed almost immediately after buying it from the jeweler. "Well, congratulations, you guys." Jack enthusiastically hugged Cindy while throwing an arm around his twin. "This is a big deal." Jack looked at MacGyver in a different light now. He knew he had previous love interests in his life based on the stories he told, but Cindy was the only one he witnessed for himself. He wasn't sure what Mac had done in past relationships, but he was always impressed with his behavior in this one. He and Cindy seemed to have found each other at the perfect time. They seemed to cut through all the phony bull most relationships go through in the beginning. That stage where you subconsciously put on your best face before the real you comes out? The way Mac told him, they met at a bookstore, and a couple days later they went for dinner and laid it all on the line, holding nothing back. They went through their likes, dislikes, deal breakers, fears, and have been together almost every day since. A month or two in, she even moved into his loft. You could even see some of her influence throughout each room. Some more than others. Jack couldn't blame her. Mac had a very bachelor vibe going for himself. The living room and adjoining kitchen weren't too bad, but the back rooms were filled with hockey, music, and fishing memorabilia that looked a lot like his own place in Colorado. He wondered how much Mac fought to keep things as is. Who have you told so far?
Well, I told my folks last night, and he's waiting to tell Sean when he comes home.
Cindy led them over to the living room seats to settle in for the discussion. Jack smiled at his brother, realizing that other than Sean, he was the only real family that he had. He felt pride and sadness at the thought. Mac paused and leaned forward in his seat. Wait. If this wasn't what you two were smiling at, what's going on? Jack stood up as if he was going to do a presentation. Well, Mac, do you ever wish you can go back and see yourself as a teenager? Mac's brow wrinkled at the thought. No. Jack shifted gears. Okay. Do you ever wish you can go back and see me as a teenager? Mac was more confused. What? Jack sighed in defeat. All right, then. John, come on out. His voice echoed down the hall past the kitchen. After a moment, a skinny pimple-faced teen appeared, unsure of how he was supposed to act. Hi, was all he could think to say. Mac jumped to his feet and stared at him confused. Then looked at both Jack and his fiancée, who was grinning with excitement. Hi. He stepped closer to get a better look at his new guest. After a beat or two, he turned back to look at Jack, and then back to John. Jack, what's going on? The Colonel wanted to savor this moment. Usually, Mac was the calmer of the two. It wasn't often he had the upper hand in any given situation. Mac, this is John. MacGyver turned to his brother, almost annoyed, and pointed his thumb back over his shoulder. I heard that, but he's a mini-you. I said that. Didn't I say that? I said that. Jack's excitement made John smirk, even though he hated that nickname. Okay, can we let him off the hook now? O'Neill took a deep breath. Fine. Over the next 45 minutes or so, Jack explained about the cloning program of the Asgard and how a rogue member had been abducting people throughout the years to experiment on them, and messed up this time with Jack due to the genetic marker to prevent such a thing. Wait, This alien was named Loki. Like the Viking god of mischief Loki? Mac was trying to piece it together. Cindy was happy to just sit and listen. She had security clearance for some time since dating MacGyver and meeting Jack. She had already been part of an adventure or two. She was leaning in, hungry for the next detail. I'd say it fit. John still had Jack's quick sarcasm. He found it funny that in Mac's eyes, he knew he was Jack's clone and not his own. Despite them being twins, they must carry themselves differently.
So the Asgard can't reproduce anymore, right?
Cindy was trying to think of all the angles. Jack leaned back in his chair. No, they've been cloning themselves for years now and are stuck. It's like a copy of a copy of a copy or something like that. Oh, so each time they get more diluted, I see. Mac's mind started to churn, trying to think of something that might help. Jack saw this and decided to bring the conversation back to John. So, once we stop Loki, John was fixed and will now be living here on Earth. Well, that's great. Any idea what you're going to do? Not a clue. That much John knew. If it were up to me, I'd still be going through the gate. But apparently the Air Force has a thing about teenagers putting their lives in danger. Mac smirked and decided to lighten the mood. Well, John, let me show you around. No need. I remember where everything is. Mac and Cindy just looked at him, waiting for him to continue. I'm his clone, so I know everything Jack knows up to the point they made me. I remember first meeting you over there. John pointed to the front door. I remember shooting Murdoch. I even remember your CD collection and how this wall was a rust color last time I was here. I assume the lighter white was Cindy's idea? A shiver ran down MacGyver's spine. Well, that's creepy. Jack patted him on the back. I'm still not used to it. Hey, I'm a little hungry. How about we go get something to eat? My treat. After a quick glance with each other, both Mac and Cindy agreed.
Sure.
Thanks. Just let me wash up and we can go. Maybe that place by the beach we liked that one time? Jack started walking towards the bathroom and Mac leaned on the couch as John moved over to talk. Cindy decided to give them their privacy and got up to put away the rest of the groceries on the counter. So, John, how have you been doing with all of this? It was the opening the teenager had hoped for. Honestly, I'm not sure. I mean, I'm thankful to be alive and all, but I kind of resent having my life stolen from me. I know it's really his life, but I still feel like it's mine, you know? Mac nodded, trying to sympathize. Did Jack ever tell you about the robot doubles he had to deal with? John held up a hand to stop him. Clone, remember? I remember all of that. He could repeat every detail of SG-1's mission to P3X-989, and being the playthings of Harlan, the artificial life form who replicated SG-1 to make companions for himself, against their will. Not one of his favorite memories. Mac covered his mouth in embarrassment. Right. Man, that's gonna take some getting used to. They both shared a smile. Well, when he told me that story, I couldn't help but think that the robot copies must have felt the same way. Good thing is, you have options. John's brow furrowed. How so? Well, think about it. You may look like a teenage boy, but you have the knowledge of a successful and skilled man. You're way ahead of the game. You can avoid a lot of the mistakes people make early in life. This made the teen relax and stare into space, thinking over Mac's words. Huh. Yeah. Think about the things you haven't done or couldn't do. What didn't you embrace the first time around? Now, you get to. Just then, Jack emerged from down the corridor. We ready? Cindy grabbed her phone and slung her purse over her shoulder.
It's not too hot. Do we want to walk?
John and Mac got up and made their way towards the door. Sure. Sounds like a plan. They made their way out the door and down the stairs into the midday sun. The sound of the quiet neighborhood brought an instant calm to the four as they headed down the block. Cindy proudly waved to their friend Kelly across the street as she watered her flowers. She felt like her family was growing. Mac could feel it too. There was a time he counted on his friends to fill that slot. But he could almost laugh at where his life was now. He had a son, a fiancé, a long-lost twin, and his teenage clone with him now. Jack glanced over to see the glow coming from the engaged couple and nudged Mac's arm. What? I'm just happy. Jack assumed they were talking about their relationship status, but safely assumed it was possibly more. He may be feeling a bit content as well. Despite the weird events that brought them together, his life was much richer than it once was. He got a kick out of the fact that his loft was in the middle of a shopping district, but found it suited his brother. It seemed like Mac had always lived in non-traditional places. He heard about the boathouse, and that he even stayed in the famous observatory used in Rebel Without a Cause. He didn't picture him in a traditional house with a white picket fence. They ended up around the corner at Best Friend's Cafe, a small place Mac and Cindy found themselves at often when they wanted to be out but couldn't decide where to go. Cindy liked the decor and the friendly staff. Mac enjoyed the fresh menu. They settled on an outside table since it was a sunny but timid day. Jack preferred to sit inside whenever he had the chance, but didn't want to be a pest. John shared a glance to say that he was thinking the same. Hi, guys. Can I start you out with some drinks? A blonde waitress greeted the foursome and handed out menus. Her name tag said Mary, but Cindy seemed to already be familiar with her.
Hi, Mary. Water with lime.
Mac echoed her, and she nodded and turned to John. What kind of beer do you have? 4 waters, please, Jack interrupted. Mary politely smiled, assuming the boy was joking. She then turned to get their drinks. Wow. Do I really obsess over beer this much? Not as long as I've known you, Mac said. John leaned in to lower his voice so the couple at the next table wouldn't overhear them. Well, when your mind still thinks like a man in his 50s. It's hard to quit cold turkey. Early 50s, Jack was quick to correct. I'm not used to being denied anything I want to eat or drink. It's taking a little getting used to. They sat in quiet understanding and looked down at their menus. Occasionally, a pedestrian would walk by. It was one of the reasons Jack and John preferred indoors. No one checking out your meal as they passed.
Oh, did I show you where we might want to get our wedding pictures taken?
Cindy grabbed her cell phone and started bringing up pictures of locations to show the guys across the table. John and Jack leaned in as she started to scroll. Max smiled as he watched her explain the positives and negatives of each location. He also knew that all Jack can do is patiently listen. This was definitely not his area of expertise. A few minutes in, Mary came back, with drinks and ready to take their orders. Each of the boys picked a variation on a burger, and Cindy chose the chicken Caesar salad. She didn't know it yet, but Mac was planning on stealing a bite. Once they were alone again, Jack's disposition seemed to change. Mac could see he wanted to discuss something. You alright? Leave it to Mac to be able to read him so well. Yeah. There's something I need to tell you guys.
Good or bad?
Good. But odd. John sat back while Mac and Cindy waited. He knew it was coming. Daniel's back. Mac squinted. Back. You mean... not dead, yeah. Jack couldn't believe he was saying it, let alone having to be the one to explain it. He really wished Carter was here. Cindy was stunned as well. As far as they knew, Daniel Jackson died after being hit with a deadly dose of radiation.
How is that possible?
Jack threw his hands up. Apparently, he was just sorta dead. His spirit ascended to a higher plane of existence, or something. Mac remembered Daniel trying to explain their previous encounters with mysterious monks and magical beings who talked like fortune cookies. Mac was curious, but Jack would just roll his eyes whenever they would talk about deeper understanding and being one with the universe. So, what? They just allow him to come back? Well, no. They sort of kicked him out. John chimed in. And took his memory. Just then, the waitress came over and handed out their lunch. They thanked her and waited for her to leave before continuing. Keep going. MacGyver had to hear more. Jack had just taken his first bite, so John continued. The oh-so-wise ones thought it would be best to dump him naked on some planet with no memory of who he was. Real nice, huh? Wow. Well, how'd you find him? Jack wiped his mouth. Accident. Jonas had led us to the planet looking for something to use against the bad guys, and he was just there. Cindy was stabbing at her salad as Mac let the news settle into his brain. No one said anything while they ate until Mac was close to done with his burger. Does he still have amnesia? He was all too familiar with that affliction himself, after a few bouts of head trauma. No, he's getting better every day. Well, that's good to hear. Mac caught the intense look on Cindy's face. What?
Wait, where's my phone?
Her hand reached out to where she left it on the edge of the table. All four quickly looked around the area and under the table in case it just fell. Then MacGyver noticed the hooded man who had just walked by their table glance back. Once he locked eyes with them, the chase was on. "Jack!" he shouted as the thief started to run. O'Neill instinctively hopped the divider between the sidewalk and the tables. He was first to run, instructing John, "Stay with her." As Mac hopped the divider next, John was already to his feet. "But I can..." The troubleshooter was in agreement with his twin and barked, "Stay!" pointing at the table. He could see Jack gaining on the thief, but didn't want to take any chances. He figured the easiest escape route would be to cut through the upcoming alley to the left, since the right would be straight into traffic. He knew where that led out, and it gave him an idea. Mac noticed he was alongside a woman's boutique, and ran inside and through the racks towards the back. The two older ladies sifting through the dresses had only time to look up as he blurred past them. He pushed out the fire door that led into the next street over. Not a second could be wasted if he had any hope of catching this guy. Running parallel with the road he had started on, MacGyver grabbed the sleeve of material he saw hanging out of a dumpster he was running by and rolled it tight without even looking down. There was no time. He knew the alley curved and twisted, so it may have given him enough time to get ahead of the two of them. Mac could hear two people running his way as he approached. When the thug darted out from the alley, his legs were suddenly snared, and the momentum flung him through the air and into the garbage cans lined up at the curb for tomorrow's pickup. Before he knew what happened, MacGyver was on top of him and locking his arms behind his back. Jack looked around confused. "Where did you come from?" Mac couldn't resist. "Minnesota." A little while later, Cindy and John caught up with the brothers and helped answer the policeman's questions about the guy, in his mid-20s, who was being patted down and handcuffed. He was big enough that Jack guessed that he had been military, but his dirty jeans and old maroon sweatshirt led him to think that it wasn't so recent. Jack turned towards his younger double to see how he was, while Mac was occupied explaining to the police officer how he caught the guy. "You guys okay?" They nodded as John stepped forward. "Yeah, I was talking to Cindy and she agrees with what Mac told me." Jack lifted an eyebrow to say that he was listening, but had no idea what his brother had been telling the kid. "I think I'm going to use this as an opportunity to embrace some of the things I didn't the first time through. You know?" This pleasantly surprised the colonel. "Any ideas?" "I got a few." Just then Mac walked back over and handed Cindy her phone. He wrapped an arm around her as he turned to the group. "Well, the police said he doesn't have a record, so he'll probably get a slap on the wrist." They glanced over as the officer placed the crook in the back seat of a squad car and closed the door. Jack started to lead them back down the block. "Well, let's hope that puts an end to that career." As the three smiled at the comment, Mac turned back to the officer, trying to catch up with him. "Mr. MacGyver, the guy in the back of the car said you dropped this." Mac looked down at the business card in the policeman's extended hand. Out of reflex, he took it and turned it over as the officer wished them a good day and walked back to his squad car. There was only a symbol on one side that was basically a circle with a line through it. Jack stepped behind him and looked over his shoulder. After turning it over a few times in his hands, Mac thought to hold it up into the sunlight. As he did, he could hear the last of the police cars pulling away. He could also now read what was on the card. "We'll see you soon." A chill ran down his spine as Mac lowered the card. In the distance, he caught the last glimpse of the hooded man. He was smiling through the backseat window at him as the car rolled out of sight. The MacGyver SG-1 audio series, written, performed, and produced by Mac Jackson. Cindy Jackson as Cindy Gans. Original theme song by Brian Brzezowski. Please support and look for more at the Forever Adventure Network. The Forever Adventure Network. Welcome to the adventure. Hi everybody. If you're looking for the best in podcasts, audio series, and music, please check out the Forever Adventure Network. We have podcasts such as the Never Gets Old podcast. We have audio series such as the MacGyver SG-1 audio series and music by Harmony Constant, as well as blogs, comics, and more. Please check us out at the Forever Adventure Network. And as always, thanks for joining the adventure. The Forever Adventure Network. Welcome to